Ryan, why don't you offer up our trivia question for the folks that are here?
All right, for those who are wondering, I tried to find where's the largest recorded like grain pile on the ground in Iowa history, and I couldn't find anything. But where's the largest grain bin in Iowa? And bonus, if you can figure out what it's used for, and to approximately how many bushels does it hold?
Okay. I'm not even going to guess because I consistently embarrass myself every
It's all good.
Thursday.
I bet you could get what it's used for.
Okay. Well, Ellie says corn, and it's used for corn.
Okay, that's fair. I was thinking like what further manufacturing? Fair. Or,
Okay. Well, we're just about 1 minute after. Okay.
close.
Ellie also says Cedar Rapids.
She's not far off.
Okay.
She's not horribly far off.
Okay. So we are recording. We're also live streaming to IFU's Facebook page, so you can find this recording there immediately after our discussion and also during, so you can go share it. I also post these to IFU's YouTube channel. What I want to highlight for people as we get started is Iowa Farmers Union's annual convention, December 6th and 7th this year in Ames, Iowa. So I'm going to drop a link and you all can go and kind of check out the agenda, all of the great things we have lined up. You can register. If you have any questions about it, let us know. And then also, I'm going to highlight our Lunch and Learn next week. We're going to be getting some kind of campaign reactions as we get closer toward election time with Robert Leonard, a journalist and author in Iowa. So go ahead and register and join us. Ryan, would you like to go ahead and take us into our discussion?
Sure. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. As like I've been farming for 17 years, and there's always been, like when we started and along the way, there's always been a lot of little legal questions that have come up, and especially when you're starting, because it's very intimidating, and just like, what do I need? When do I need it? And trying to unpackage that is certainly a challenge for any beginning farmer. So, we have two guests here today to kind of help tease at that issue for us, and maybe provide some additional resources for both beginning farmers and other farmers who are already established in their farm business. So we have with us Dr. Jennifer Swagerman, professor at Drake Ag Law Center, and Deborah, is it Pettit? She serves dual roles as like a project clinic attorney for the Entrepreneurial and Transitional Law Clinic, and as the Rural Empowerment Legal Fellow for the Agricultural Law Center, all that at Drake. So with that being said, I'd like to hand it off to you guys to take it away, and then we'll come back for some questions. If you have questions along the way, feel free to drop them into the chat, and we'll try to circle back to them in the last 5 minutes or so. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ryan, and thanks everybody for joining us today. Deborah and I are excited to sort of talk to you about two projects, areas, I guess, that we have going on here at Drake. I know many of you are probably familiar with the Agricultural Law Center and the work that my predecessor, Neil Hamilton, did through here and continues to do. And for those that aren't, we'll touch on that a little bit later. But really, what we wanted to talk with you about today are the Entrepreneurial Clinic that Deborah is a key kind of component of right now, and the work that it does and what's available to new and beginning farmers and entities, as well as a new grant project that we have that we're working on as well in developing resources for rural development, new farmers, incubators, those types of areas as well. So I'm going to let Deborah kick it off with more about the Entrepreneurial Clinic and the work that they do there.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today. As Ryan mentioned, I am new to Drake University Law School. I and dove in now with two hats. I work for both our legal clinic and the Agricultural Law Center. But those two roles have come together really on one of the purposes that we want to serve. Um, I came on board initially as part of the Governor's Empower Rural Iowa program, where even though the clinic's been in existence serving various nonprofits and low-income communities for several years, we're also now focusing on serving rural Iowa communities. So we wanted to bring that to your group's attention and just explain a little bit of the background of the ETC and what potential services we may be able to offer, in particular to new or beginning farmers. The clinic itself is very broad. It does have 6 specialty clinics. What we're here to talk to you about today is the ETC, which focuses on transactional or business matters. The clinic itself is comprised of each semester, typically 8 to 10 students who apply their classroom knowledge, and we operate as a law firm. We do represent clients. The process typically is if you have a particular legal issue that fits within our scope, we have an application process. And I know in the chat box, there's a link to the clinic website where you can get the application if there's a particular area in your business that you need assistance with. Those students, it benefits both the community and it benefits the students because it takes them out of the classroom setting, and under the supervision of myself and our director, Nick Roby, gives them the opportunity to work with real clients, again, which we supervise and are able to do a variety of services for our clients. The students themselves, just for your background knowledge, are sworn into practice law while they're at the clinic. And again, have the contemporaneous classroom experience that they can apply under our supervision to our individual clients. The types of transactional services that we offer that would be of relevance to beginning farmers or ongoing farmers are startup of the business if it's not in entity formation. We're focusing on employee-owned cooperatives if certain groups want to form an employee-owned cooperative. And when we do a startup of a business through our students, we do the typical filings of either the articles of organization, or the certificates of organization, and of course the new CTA compliance submissions that are required this year for Iowa entities. And then in particular, which might focus particular to this group, we do have the ability to work on commercial leases, financial contracts, standard service contracts, or any other business agreements or documents that might be something that's being faced by faced by the new or again, ongoing farmers in the group. The key to the clinic that we work through with our student services is that those services are free of charge. So that's our good selling point to assist on these types of matters. And the only charges are the out-of-pocket fees that might be the filings with the Secretary of State or any fees for governmental filings that may be charged. And really, that's a summary of what the clinic offers at the ETC clinic that might be of interest to you. And again, the procedure for us to determine whether the particular matter or legal matter that might be of concern to you can be processed through our website, through the application process. And I know at the end of the conversation, my email address is also going to be available.
Well, in addition to the work that is available through the clinic, our new initiative is it's got a horrible acronym. We've got to come up with a better name for it here, but it's this Farm Incubator and Rural Business Resource Center. And we end up having it in writing all the time. It looks like FIRBRC or something along those lines. So if anybody is creative and has some ideas on renaming our acronyms, we appreciate that. But this is something that we were able to get funding for. We have a 3-year grant with the goal of developing resources that are in addition to what we offer through the center, but are also much more broadly available. And this was through a couple of needs that we were seeing to address. And one, this recognition that for a lot of folks that are looking to start their own agricultural business, food business, maybe it's not even farming or going through an incubator and starting an operation that way, but you're looking to do some sort of local food business, or selling produce or anything along those lines, whether it's in that agricultural sphere or even just general rural development, that with the decreasing number of lawyers in rural communities, we don't have those common resources to just pop a question off, right? Or somebody that you're just bouncing ideas off of or talking with at the coffee shop who can say, well, have you thought about this, right? Just having that local lawyer that knows the area and the concerns, and at least, even if they don't practice in that area, know where the issue spotting sort of falls. And so that's really what we're hoping to do here, is develop, I sometimes refer to it as the choose your own adventure book, but a series of resources through the Agricultural Law Center that will be the what you don't know what you don't know guide. And the goal is, because food and agriculture in particular are so heavily regulated, particularly depending on which type of areas you're getting into, is that we want to make sure that folks aren't setting themselves up to be violating a rule or a regulation, or going down a more difficult path before you even get started. And so, Deborah mentioned that the clinic can help with some of the business startup organizations and the filings, but part of the step before that is figuring out, well, why do I need to have, or should I have, some sort of business entity? How do I need to think about protecting myself? What's the best format for, or option for what I'm looking to do? And we want to be able to have at least some background in that for people to look at, so that they can start to make some of those decisions going into it. It could be, for new and beginning farmers, thinking about labor laws, record keeping, the things that benefit from how do you qualify for being considered a farmer under USDA programs, and the benefits of that, particularly Schedule F. Just sort of an understanding of, we have a timer on our lights here, excuse me. Understanding all of these things that may apply to you at some point, but also setting it up in a way that you don't have to look at everything, right? It's sometimes it's overwhelming to see information and all of the potentials out there, but we want to set it up in a way that allows you to figure out, if I'm looking at this type of business or this type of entity, or I have this type of question, here's where I start. And particularly in that food and ag sector, it's also providing information of, okay, you're starting out, here's where you are now, but at this level, now you have to think about these things, right? The small business exemptions have changed, or if you're going to sell across state lines, now we have to rethink. And we've had the opportunity to start, particularly Deborah, visiting with a lot of different organizations, including some of the folks here at IFU, as well as some of the other aspects of agriculture and startups within the state. And we're getting some really good feedback about better understanding where some of these pressure points are, where the questions come up, where the stumbling blocks are, And that's one of the things we want to ask more, though, is where are the needs? You know, it's easy for us on the outside to say, this is where, as a lawyer, the types of questions we get. But in working with the organizations like IFU, like Practical Farmers of Iowa, and some of the other groups, then we get the feedback from those they work with. And perhaps it's where somebody got in trouble or where someone stumbled, where you see a neighbor that had issues. And that's going to help us answer some of these questions so we can develop the resources that are most relevant. And then figure out what's the most effective way to get them out there to everybody as well. And it's been a process, right? It's a lot of interviews and just talking to people, which is fun. And like I said, Deborah's had the bulk of that work, and it has been just having a great opportunities to interact with people. But interacting and having the chance to talk to those of you who are either watching this live or later, and who can give us your experiences and provide that information is helpful as well. You know, when we started this thought, it started as a class project I did with some of my students a couple of years ago. And we were working with one of the local farm incubators who in particular talked a lot with or worked a lot with refugees who absolutely knew the farming aspect of it and had no problem in terms of the growing food and the farming process. But when it came to contracting, when it came to things like business records, when it came to some of the basic food safety, where you could sell, how you could sell, insurance, those types of things, those were the areas where they just had no experience. And, you know, in talking with them, we realized that's the kind of thing where unless you have someone to talk to who can ask you those questions, that's where that idea of you don't know what you don't know falls into. And that's really our goal, is to figure out how we can be that resource, even if we're not through the clinic aspect or the clinic arm of this program there to represent you. We can at least help you identify that maybe talking to a lawyer is the best thing for you right now. Because like I said, we have a limited sort of scope through the clinic, knowing that, you know, it's the student-based work. But we have folks, you know, our alumni and other resources, you know, across the state that we're happy to help put you in touch with. As part of just this broader focus that we have here at Drake, at really trying to look at this rural access to justice and rural legal access, even if it's not in that justice side. But how can we not just meet a need, but then how can we help fill a gap in the longer term as well, whether that's through people or resources as we go. And I know we want to make sure we leave time for questions, so I don't want to talk too long. I know we sort of flipped through the side because I forgot, but we're doing this sort of under the umbrella of the Agricultural Law Center here at Drake. I've been the director for about 5 years now, and I'm only its second director, and it's 40-ish years of existence, Neil Hamilton having been the first. And you know, over the years, that's really our goal, is we have this arm of the work we do here to train that next generation and help that next generation of lawyers better understand the issues that our food and agricultural system face, so that whatever aspect of the industry you work in, that they have that appreciation for the complexity and importance of it as well. And then the flip side of it, I guess, or the other arm that we have is really this outreach portion. Is we want to be a resource not just for training attorneys or a resource for current attorneys, but helping take some of these complex legal issues and issues that need context maybe to better understand, and helping provide that for those within the industry. And that can include, in the past, we've done things like the Farmer's Guide to legal marketing, you know, direct marketing of food. And we've had, I was just looking at them earlier up on my shelf here, the legal guide for direct farm marketing, and a farmer's legal guide to producer marketing associations. One of Neil's last ones, right before he retired, was a legal guide for landowners in agriculture. And this is sort of the continuation of that, but doing it on a bigger scale, ideally, as we try and make it available through our website, not just a publication, but also in a way that allows you to choose the resources that are most relevant to you at the time. And with that, Ryan, I think if we want to open it to questions or anything else, we're happy to do that as well. And I want to thank you, Deborah, for switching back to here. This is the slide of the type of questions that when we're talking with folks and Deborah's doing interviews that we're asking, and we welcome your feedback. Deborah's email in particular, I mean, you're welcome to email me. I'm happy to respond to questions, but from the information sharing side, rather than duplicating emails, if you want to email Deborah, your thoughts, suggestions, we would, like I said, welcome your input as we work on determining what resources are going to be most helpful moving forward.
Well, I see a couple of questions here, and I'll speak for myself as someone who's been doing this for a while. Like, I've always felt a degree of frustration in terms of, like, with the state of not being very transparent about what you might need to have. Like, to me, it's like other states have this figured out where you can, like, kind of like go through a series of, like, basically work down through the tree to figure out, like, what you need to operate your type of business. But that seems to be beyond. Iowa has never yet produced such a thing. So, like, do you need this regulation? Do you need this? This one might reply. You need to look into it more, or something like that. To me, that's always been something of a kind of a perpetual frustration with the state of Iowa. Or if I'm, like, talking to a new farmer and I'm like, well, this is what I've encountered. Talk to some peers. I don't have a great resource to send you to all the time. So.
Yeah, well, ideally, we're going to be able to be that resource for you here. But that's exactly, at least in part, I would say some of those questions you just mentioned are what we're hoping to do. To maybe start with a series of questions like, are you going to be selling your food directly to consumers? And if so, then in addition to whatever else is a yes, you need to read this, start here. And if you're just selling through farm markets, or if you're just selling through a co-op, here's questions for you to look at to try, and it doesn't mean that you won't have to look at multiple columns or multiple areas, right, but hopefully it's going to let you think through and say which of these might apply to me, but also be that resource that you can remember 5 years down the road, if something were to change, that there's a place to go look as well.
I can look. Yeah. No, that would be really good to have that, because I mean, that is kind of a perpetual frustration of me, or when, like, working with beginning farmers through either just in casual conversations or Practical Farmers of Iowa, that it just feels like there's a gap in terms of that resource doesn't really seem to exist. Well, I do have some more specific delineated questions. But some people are wondering about the Corporate Transparency Act, which a lot of us, we just did ours. A lot of people out there, especially in our business, need to have their ducks in a row here pretty quick if they've been doing this for a while. So do you want to discuss that briefly, or?
Yeah, I could take that one, Jennifer. Yes, generally you have until the end of the year. If you're an existing, have been an existing entity to file, there's the utilization of the guide that the government has posted is very helpful. When you get on their website, it does have a very resourceful guide, number one, and I can post that later if it's something that you're doing individually, as well as the Q&A that's on that website. But in general, it does apply, to all entities where our beneficial owners, that's defined as 25% or more, or the other factor is whether a shareholder has or a member has substantial control in an entity. There are some exemptions, they're pretty narrow, but the general rule is if you meet either of those two qualifications for your entity, then you do need to make that filing by the end of the year. And it's, we don't necessarily have a guide for it, but it's certainly something that we can follow up on and assist people if they're having issues with that.
Yeah, it's something we've been kind of like nudging people to, like, hey, you should look into this because it's going to sneak up on you. Because we're not used to doing it. So,
and I know I've heard a lot, a frequent question to me is, well, I'm just a sole proprietor. And that is, you know, that's, I think, a legal term that may be confusing to a lot of people. If you're an entity that exists because you filed a certificate of organization or articles of organization with the Iowa Secretary of State, then that triggers the requirement that you comply with the CTA by the end of the year. That's the trigger, rather than a legal term of whether you're a sole proprietorship or not.
yeah, we've generally said if basically any business that's basically not a nonprofit, not in the financial or insurance world, you're probably in that hat. So you should probably go look into it. So
you are correct. And I also caution people, I have a concern that at the end of the year, that the website's going to be inundated with people filing. So I would say as soon as the harvest season is over, that might be a next priority to avoid the delays that I hear and are anticipated with those filings.
it's probably pretty fair. Knowing how people work, that's pretty fair. So we have some other people kind of wondering about eminent domain and you know, what happens if, you know, they're looking at a situation where they got to like negotiate an easement with, like, for a pipeline. Was that something they could, like, they could at least ask, I would imagine, but I don't know. How would you approach something like that if it came across your doorstep? The farm gets into a situation like this.
Yeah, I would say for something like particularly the type of easements that we're talking about with Summit and the Carbon pipeline, those don't really fall under the entrepreneurial, more of that business startup. Deborah, correct me if I'm wrong here, because those are really talking about more existing businesses and those types of areas. Now, that being said, there are definitely folks that can help with that we can help make referrals to. And it doesn't mean that there aren't other aspects of the clinic that may apply as well. My concern is that some of these are probably longer than what our student timeframe might be, or beyond some of that basic student, you know, kind of practice that we work on. What do you think, Deborah? Is that something, am I off on my take?
I would agree with you that that's probably outside the scope of our typical engagements.
That's fair.
Yeah, what we have been doing with folks that have questions on here is just providing some general, you know, resources, advice, obviously referrals where we can. And, you know, a lot of times it's really more negotiating the same you would anything else. And because there are so many others that are doing this, there are some good resources and folks out there to help with that too.
Awesome. Well, I'm just excited to have what you're working on as a potential resource to send farmers to, or beginning farmers to, just as because there just isn't a very good one out there right now, at least in this state, to kind of route them toward. So I think that would be a significant asset for the future. And if they have any questions about the project, they should reach out to Deborah, whose email is in the chat there. You guys have any closing remarks you want to make before we bring this thing down?
No, just that if folks do have questions, you know, the Ag Law Center, I know that our website, I think, is going to be, if it isn't already shared in the chat, the clinic website will be in there. And we do have a variety of resources on the site. It hasn't been well updated. We're in the process of sort of getting that updated, but there are still a lot of good resources on there that might help answer some questions. But you are always welcome to reach out to the center. The center here ourselves, we do not provide legal representation, But we are, like I said, able to provide a lot of resources and the referrals, but sometimes it's just the information that you're looking to help you make a decision. I see one of the questions was talking about, navigating the estate sale. Those things I think are ones that if we can't represent you through the clinic, by talking with us here, we can always try and help, again, provide the information or resources that would help you through that process.
Sure. Well, Jennifer and Deborah, thank you very much for being here today. I did want to circle back to our trivia question. The largest grain bin in Iowa is in Mason City, Iowa. Ellie's right, it holds corn, but it holds 2.2 million bushels of corn. It's 165-foot diameter and 155 and 7 inches tall, and it's used for ethanol production. Shock.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for the opportunity to join you all today, and we appreciate any and all feedback as we move forward.
Yes, thank you. And again, with these questions, I welcome any thoughts, even if it's not a particular engagement that you're seeking, but emails responding to these questions, I welcome, so that we can help figure out what we don't know and how we can help.
Awesome. Thank you for being here today. I'm Ryan Marquardt with Iowa Farmers Union. Christina, do you have anything else for us on the way out?
I would just mention, everybody follow the links I just put in the chat and go ahead and check out the agenda for IFU's annual convention this year in Ames, December 6th and 7th, and then go ahead and register for our next discussion next Thursday, our usual time, with Bob Leonard. He'll be giving us some campaign reactions. So check both of those things out.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.